Hey YouTube, today I'm going to do a brake job on a 2011 GMC Yukon. And you have to bear with me here, there's a little bit of wind going on today, but we're going to push through and get this brake job done anyways. But speaking of noise, one of the ways that I knew this brake job needed to be done is you could hear this noise. These brake pads are designed to have a squeaker on them. So when they get worn enough, they'll get worn down to that squeaker, so you'll have that constant noise all the time. So if you hear this noise, there's a good chance you need to do a brake job. Okay, before I get started on this brake job, I've got the vehicle jacked up. I did use the factory jack to get it jacked up, and then I also put a jack stand. It's very important when you're working underneath the vehicle to have a jack stand in position in case you were to have a jack fail. And now that we've got that done, we can proceed with our brake job. And part of the procedure is we're going to have to get these brake shoes or brake pads released and push the hydraulic piston back into the caliper. So one of the first things I'm going to do is remove the cap for my master cylinder. That way it allows the air to get pushed out when I do the push the piston back in there. So to get these loosened up, I'm going to take a pry bar and pry it between the caliper and the rotor, and just to give myself some clearance. That way when I remove the caliper bolts, we'll be able to get this off the rotor. And we've got two bolts, one on top and the bottom, holding the caliper in position. On this car it's a 19 millimeter. So we're going to remove those bolts. All right, so those bolts were tight, so I'm going to go ahead and use a breaker bar to get them broken loose. All right, much easier getting it broken loose with a breaker bar. All right. Now that we've got it broken loose, I can use my electric ratchet without fear of breaking it. And there's also a backing nut. I'll just able to hold that with my fingers. So now we can get our caliper pried off. All right, we'll get it set right up here. We'll get our brake shoes off. You can see those are getting pretty worn, and there's that squeaker that I'm talking about that'll start riding on your rotor. So we're going to get these pulled out of the way. Now, as you can hear, we're moving it and we don't have that squeak noise that was there. And on this one, we're just going to put new pads on. If we were going to do new rotors, there's a couple of bolts that break, that take this bracket off. And then once that happens, you just simply need to remove this rotor and install a new one. It does have a couple of these holes right here that you can install a bolt that can help you remove that rotor off. Of course, you remove this fastener. And but now we're just going to install our new brake pads. I ordered some online These are by Bendix. Bendix is a respected company. Of course, they didn't send me these. I paid for them myself. As you can see, there's our new pad, much thicker than our old pads that are worn out. And you want to get them changed out before they go too long, because if all the friction material gets removed, you can just be down to the metal, and then your brakes are what they call metal on metal, and that'll damage your rotors, and then you'll have to put new rotors on for sure, or get them turned to remove the damage. And when I do these only fit a certain way. You'll just have to play with them to see which one is in the right position, so you can get it installed where it needs to go. All right. And now our next step is we need to push these pistons back into the caliper to make room for our new brake pads. So I'm going to take one of the old brake pads and a C-clamp to get those shoved back in there. You can also use a large pair of pliers, just anything that's going to get them shoved back in there. And you want to take that cap loose on your master cylinder, because if somebody's added brake fluid after when your brake pads wear, you have more fluid that goes into the caliper, so your brake fluid level will drop. And if somebody topped that off and then you just go shove that back in there with a cap on, you may cause some bad things to happen. So it's just a safe, easy bet just to take that cap off when you're pushing these back in. Now this is a dual caliper piston, so sometimes you have to go back and forth there a little bit just to get them both pushed in evenly. Just if they start going sideways, just keep cranking, and then they'll both go in, and then just push them in until they're flat. All right. And then so our next step is to install our brake pads. And we've got two shoes on. When they came off, the squeaker was on the inside brake pad, so we're going to put it back like that. And then we're going to install our outside pad. So now we're looking good there. Just need to go ahead and get our caliper installed. So we're going to reinstall our bolts to hold that caliper in position. Now these bolts kind of there's a slide pin that slides back and forth that allows that caliper to move course, you've only got the pistons on one side, so it needs to slide back and forth. So it's also a good idea just to check to make sure that you've got good movement in those caliper pins, which we do have. Sometimes they can get frozen or stuck, and you'll end up wearing one pad completely down, and the other pad will still have quite a bit of friction material left on it. So then we're going to tighten those bolts up. All right, then you want to check them to make sure that you've got them tight. And now, as you can see, we can move it. We don't have any of that noise from the squeaker pads for the brakes being worn. We're riding on our rotor. And we can go ahead and do the other side. It's going to be the same procedure. After you get the new pads put on, get in, pump that pedal down until you've got a good solid pedal. Put your cap back on your master cylinder, and then you should be good to go. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.